Good morning again, everybody. I hope your year is well underway. You're getting started. For us as a church, because it fell on the first, it's exciting to be able to be together on the first, but it is always a little bit kind of left foot because of the fact that still a lot of people are gone for some holiday things and getting back. But we went ahead and started with where we're going for the first half of this year last week. And if you happen to have not been here, you don't need to hear the message because you need to hear me speak, but you may need to hear the message because you may need the foundation of what we're actually going to be talking about over these next few months, actually. We're going to endeavor to actually take a pretty thorough inventory of our lives and really look and see what God has to say about these different areas of our lives and what He would like to do in them. This is a journey that I've personally been on for some years. I even though I've been after it for a few years, I oftentimes feel like I'm just beginning. But what I do know is I can look back over the years as I've been tackling some of these things. What I can see is even though I have so far to go, I'm not where I used to be. I have moved. I'm maybe at least from over here over to here, some maybe a little further, and some maybe a little bit back here, but God has been helping me to make some moves in the right direction through paying attention to some things that really, really matter in our lives in kind of a fresh and more intentional kind of way. And I'm not going to, for some of you, you maybe have done some of these things for your whole life, but this series that we're doing a two-part series. This is the last part of this two-part series, but it launches into a series of series that will actually go all the way until the end of June. And so each of these series will be, the longest ones I think are like 4 weeks long. And then there's some shorter ones that are 2 or 3 weeks long. But over this process that we're in, we're going to be really doing some homework, some internal work in our lives, and turning some stones over, looking at some things, and really trying to propel us individually into growth. And I think as we do that, it will affect our families, it will affect our church, affect everything. So we're going to endeavor to engage you as much as you're willing to engage. We can't force engagement, but we're going to encourage you to be engaged as much as you're willing to be over these next months. And let's try to make a concerted effort to grow together in these areas. I wanted to, we talked a little bit last week about the idea, and I just want to mention it briefly, the idea that oftentimes at the beginning of a new year, we make resolutions, and I'm all for that. Okay, I'm not against that. But oftentimes, if we're not careful, we're adding things onto what we already have, a pretty full plate. And so what I would like for us to do is initially, before you add something on, let's look at what we need to take away. And so here is, I think that at the ultimate end of this thing, it comes down to the choices we make. And if you go back to the outline last week, I'd like to encourage you, we're going to be actually handing out notebooks coming up here in the next week or two for you to be able to catalog some of these things along, because they do build on top of each other. And so we'll be, whether you still have last week's sheet or not, it'll be filled out for you, and it'll be in your notebook to make sure you can always refer back to it as we're going forward. So, but in there, it talks about, the fact that we have to let go of some things in order to take on some things. Remember the two stories? The people actually went and sold everything they had so that they could get what was more important. And it doesn't mean that you have to go get rid of everything in your life, but truth is there probably are some things you do need to get rid of before you can move on. Several, I don't know, maybe a couple, probably about 4 months ago, somewhere in there, I went to a rehab setting. I was there as a source of encouragement for someone who was having to do this. And so, so I was sitting in that group, in a group with a number of people who actually, if they were there, the reason they were there, it was either be there or go to jail. It's like, you go to this or you go to jail. So these people were here in this. And so it was an orientation, and the gentleman stood up, and he was a big man, and he was standing up there, and he was giving the orientation, and he was explaining, now you're going to be taking this class, and you're going to be getting drug tested every so often, and you're this and that, and the other. I mean, just all the different things. And he mentioned, and I don't remember the exact. This is what the class sounded like to me. I should have written it down because I know in my brain I would forget. But he said something about, I would just call it this: making good life choices. That was one of the classes, and it may not have been called that. That was kind of the essence of it. And there was a guy sitting over there, kind of opposite of me, and he raised his hand. And so I'm obviously paying total attention to everything here. And he said, sir, if you've already taken that class like twice, do you have to, maybe I don't have to take that class? Look, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, man, this is funny, but I can't laugh in here. And I'm thinking, I wonder what he said. Well, don't worry, this guy up front, he'd been here before. And so he said something like this. He said, the fact that you are here again is a clear indication you didn't get it the first or the second time. So absolutely, you have to take it. Well, isn't there something in all of us, though? That it's like, it made me think also of a situation where I had someone call and they wanted me to, they were getting married the next day or something like that, the next week, or it was real quick. And I said, well, ma'am, I didn't know the people. They just kind of randomly called the church, and this has been some years ago. He said, would you mind marrying? I said, when do you get married? They go, Friday or something. This is like Tuesday. I said, well, I require like 6 pre-married sessions and a session before and this kind of stuff. And I said, I don't, there'd be no way we could do that. I said, if you want to delay it, then I can meet with you. And she goes, no, I don't think you understand. She goes, I've been married twice before. I understand this thing. Okay, I'm glad you guys are paying attention. It's like, and so now, that doesn't, I'm not reflecting. If someone's been married multiple times, I'm not reflecting poorly on that. I'm just simply saying, you could be a wonderful person, but still choosing poor people. It's like there's some things probably ought to talk about, ought to sit down and talk about. And so most of us are aware of the fact that there are things in our lives that we need to address. We need to kind of declutter from our lives. We need to clear out. But oftentimes it's easier just to add on. And so stick with me on this. I want you to look with me, if you would, at 2 verses of Scripture that are at the top of your sheet. That says a time to search and a time to quit searching. This is in that passage in Ecclesiastes where it's time for everything, It says a time to keep and a time to throw away. I want you to look to the person next to you and say, you got to throw some stuff away. You got to throw some stuff away. It's okay. You can take it to a Salvation Army or someplace but you got to get rid of it. There's some stuff you've got to get rid of. I mean, the Bible says it itself. Hey, it's great to keep some stuff, but there's sometime you better get rid of some stuff. My very first solo pastorate, where I was like the preaching pastor, was in Kansas City, and it was a great experience for us. There's a core of people there, just awesome people. I love them to this day. They're amazing people. There was a guy there. He was a UPS he was a UPS semi-truck driver. And he was one of the most methodical persons I'd ever met in my life. And so methodical that he kind of almost drove me nuts. It was like, I liked him, but I'm saying it's like, he was extremely methodical. Some people might call it OCD or other kinds of terms. But computers were quite new at that time. I know that surprises you that I date back to that time period, but they were very new. And he was into computers, and so he'd gotten one. He had done an inventory. He had 2 boys. He was married, had 2 boys. He had done an inventory of their entire house, everything. And he had a rule in their house. He had no problem with them buying another item of clothes or something else. But if they brought something else in the house, they had to get rid of something they already had. And I remember, I'm in my 20s, and I'm listening. This guy is just like in his 30s, but he seemed like an older, wiser guy, But and I'm listening to this, and I'm going, man, That's pretty strict. I mean, that's pretty tough. But then, at the 50s, you go look in your closet and you're going, why didn't I do that? That's a really good idea, Roger. That was a really good idea. So, I'm not saying that you have to do that, but what I am saying is this. It's important for us to realize and to recognize that if we don't get rid of some things, we'll find ourselves under the clutter. And we'll wonder, why can't I ever get ahead? Why can't I ever do this? Why can't I ever do that? Why can't I? It's because we haven't taken any time to throw something away. We just keep keeping and keep keeping. And I know, I doubt anybody here is as bad enough at hoarding to get on that show or whatever. But at the same time, many of us sometimes, sometimes, I don't know if you ever have watched that kind of show. I've watched it maybe like twice in my life. And it's almost a little bit creepy, and because I think we all know we have a little bit of that in us, don't we? There's something in all of us that could say, oh, I don't think I'd quite get to that point, but anyway. So we see ourselves in there. It can kind of cause us to pull back a little bit. We all have limited time, and we all have limited space. And some people have more space than others, and sometimes that's a blessing, sometimes that's a curse, If you go in a house and go, I love this house, look at all the closets in here. Be careful. I love this house. It has 8 attics. This is amazing. Do you ever plan to move, or are you going to leave that for your kids when you die? You got to think that through. So, everybody doesn't have the same amount of space, but we all have limited space. We all are, with time, we have the same, but it is still limited time. What are you going to do with it? We all have limited energy. So sometimes it's not, some people can handle 50 things and handle them well. Other people, 5 things just overwhelms them. And it's very important to know what you can handle and what you can't handle, because if you don't, you'll end up looking at somebody else and thinking, well, they're doing that, I can do it too. And it'll take you down where it isn't taking them down. So you can't compare you. You have to understand and know yourself. You have to understand you have limited time, limited space, and limited energy. And then I would like to encourage you as we're kind of going through here, and this is sort of just some overarching concepts, okay? And that is this. Whenever you're decluttering, it's best to declutter, if you're, let's just say, in your house, declutter one room at a time. Because you start decluttering everything, you're going to get very overwhelmed, and you'll just give up, and you'll say, oh, that'd make a great project for 2018. That's what, I need a new project for 2008, that'll be that one. So we'll just put it off till that, and then 19 and 20 and wherever down the line. And so a room at a time is a good idea when it's, I would also say this, whenever it has to do with different areas of our life, a category at a time. There's something about us when we get ready to address things, we want to address it all. We want to do it all. We want to fix it all. We want to do it all right now. But we're better off just to kind of begin to focus in on a category at a time and deal with it. Or an area where it has to do with our personal, our mind, our heart, our emotions, our being, our physical being, who we are as a person. Just an area of our being at a time, not everything at once. And so those are just sort of some clarifying things. And so here's a basic concept as we go into this entire set of series today in this set of series. Here's a basic concept I would like to have you to think about, and that is declutter and replacement. Declutter and replacement. If you get rid of something, it might have just been junk, so you get rid of it and you don't replace it. But oftentimes, when we get rid of something, we need to replace it with something better, or we'll fill it with the same old junk. See, I don't know if you've ever, if you're like have a pile problem or anything like that, But if you have a pile problem, you can go, I'm getting rid of my pile. And you say, Rod, how do you know so much about this? Because this is me, okay? I got rid of my pile many times. And you know what I found out? Somebody gave me another pile. The pile reappeared. You know why the pile reappeared? I got rid of the pile, but I didn't change what got me piles. And so we don't have, getting rid of it's great, but fixing how we go about either getting piles or not getting piles is the next step. So not only declutter, but replacement as well. And so let's get started on our outline here. This one's, I don't know. I think I'm just trying to think of some way to throw this in this morning, okay? So you can call it a rabbit trail, you can call it whatever, but it's something I want to share with you, okay? I've kind of decided there's an area that I'm going to improve on in this. I'm going to declutter in my life. It doesn't have to do with anything on the list here, so I'm just going to tell it to you at the outset. On a personal disclosure, I've decided that I'm going to build better relationships with police officers over this next year. And so, now, I understand there's a lot of news about all. Look, if you've been around here at all, my relationship with police officers has gone back, way, way back. Okay, can everybody say that's true? Okay, that's true. This has nothing to do with current stuff in the news, okay? Nothing to do with that stuff at all. This just has to do with Rod thinking that he knows better how to drive than the police officers who've been trained to help everybody. You know, it's my problem. It has nothing to do with police officers, really, anything. But I've decided I'm gonna be a nice guy to police officers. I'm gonna be very kind. I'm gonna be very respectful. And if I do something wrong, I'm gonna admit it, and I'm not gonna try to shrug it off or something like that. So this got tested early on. This is another story that I won't get into, but it has to do with a second puppy we had gotten some months ago. But my mind is on something that happened regarding that, and Vanjie and the kids are at the house, and Vanjie's saying, I need you to get here as soon as possible, and everything. So I'm building that up to rationalize why I might have been accelerating this a little bit. Okay, but I'm coming to Furious Ferry, and there was one of those persons who, you know, I didn't do it, but I needed to encourage with my horn, you know, that horn encouragement thing, you know. I needing to encourage them, but instead of needing to do that, an opening broke out. So it's 4 lanes, so I just went around them, kind of just accelerated and went on around them. But just as I was going around them, I saw this state trooper parked in a driveway over to the right, and I thought, I don't think he lives there. I think he's visiting very temporarily, and he's paying attention to what's going out here. And so I just decelerate and you know, keep on going, and I'm going, Lord, you know I'm, you know, distracted with this puppy thing. Please just help him be distracted. And so he kind of pulls out, and he was back a good little ways, and he turned his light on. I'm going, he's after somebody else, whatever. But he kept going and going and going with his lights on. I thought, well, he's got a problem, you know. And he had a problem, all right, and I was his problem. So he pulled in behind me, and I pull into a bank, and I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, oh, how's this going to go? And I mean, this is a state trooper. This is the real stuff here, you know. So he comes up beside me, and he said, you know why I pulled you over? I said, look, I don't know for sure. I said, I wasn't looking. Was I going too fast? I said, I wasn't looking at my speedometer or anything like that. He said, well, you hit 61. It's 45. I said, man. I said, I mean, was I like driving 61 or what? He goes, no, you just hit 61. He goes, you know, weren't you the one coming out around that car? I said, yeah, I was. I said, man, I'm so sorry. And now you don't understand. That's different than my normal approach, okay? That's different. So I said to him, I said, listen, I said, I'm very sorry. I said, I apologize. And I said, I just, you know, guess need to slow down. He said, yeah. He said, can you give me your license and all that? I go, this isn't working at all. God, I don't know. This agreement we had, this is not working. And he comes back up and he goes, you know, Mr. Addison, he said, you seem like a very fine gentleman. I thought, well, I'm starting to like him better already, you know. And I thought, well, he's building me up for a big ticket. And he said, you know, he said, you seem like, he said, I feel like you are a safe driver. You know what I'm really liking this guy. And he just sort of just talked about what a fine person I was. And he just slow it down out there, you know. Take it easy. He said, I'm not going to ticket you or anything. I said, I really, really appreciate that, sir, very much. And by the way, you're a very fine officer. And so he gave my stuff, and he went on. I went on. And listen, about 10 days later, I was sitting in a coffee shop waiting for somebody. And you know, just facing the door so I could see them when they came in. And this trooper walked in the door. And I thought, chances are the way they stand back here, he didn't recognize me. And so, but I recognized him. And he walked up to the counter. And it was one person back, and I kind of slipped up behind him, like I'm looking at the menu. And I pulled out my credit card, or my debit card, by the way. Anyway, and I'm looking at the menu, and he ordered. And as soon as he ordered, I said, excuse me, I said, I'd like to pay for this gentleman's coffee if I could. And I swiped the card, and I said, I'd just like to thank you for all the good deeds you do and the kindness you show to people. And you're doing a great job. And I walked over and sat down. I have no idea if he remembered me, but God gave me a chance to actually do something good for him. And I felt like saying, since you let me off of that one ticket, here I'm paying. No, well, that's not good. Now I'm going to be get for bribery. Anyway, so I really wanted to tell you that story. I don't know if it fits in this morning or not, but anyway, we got it off my chest. Let's go into the sermon, okay? You go, Rod, that's terrible. I know. If I need to ask forgiveness, I will. Let's begin at number 1, okay? And let's talk about these areas. And I want to tell you, all this is a setup for where we're going, but today does matter very much because it helps us get in the conversation and get some action going. So number 1, declutter your thought process. Declutter your thought process. There's so many things that can clutter our minds. What about worry? Have you ever just had worry just consume your thoughts? You can't even do anything else almost because of worry? What about fear? When fear grips us, I know fear is more like an emotion, but I think when fear grips us, what happens is it takes up way too much real estate in our mind. And it causes us to overreact, overthink, do less than we should. Envy. Whenever we're always thinking about what other people have and what we don't have. When we're always focused on looking at other people's situations and wishing that we had their life. I'm going to tell you, most of the time, you really don't want to trade your life for somebody else's, okay? I'm just going to tell you, just take your own set of issues and challenges and whatever, and realize they've got their own set. And even though their life may look great, there's some things that they're dealing with that you don't know about. Numbing. And that is where we just stop thinking about. We sort of numb our brain. And we can do that with addiction kind of things, with drugs or with alcohol or other kinds of things. We can numb ourselves in that way. But sometimes we just numb ourselves, like almost where we shut down. We don't think creatively. We don't think positively. We don't think with a vision for our life. We feel like everything I do falls apart. Everything I do kind of doesn't come about. Everything I hope for seems to not work, and so I'm just going to I'm just going to shut down. And so we just sort of numb ourselves toward anything, thinking positively for the future or for our lives. Distraction, and I'm going to tell you, there's something that is really one of the biggest distractions in our culture. I would say TV is one of them. And that used to probably be the number one thing. You know, you don't want to think about things, so what you do is when you come home from work, you just turn the TV on, you just sit there till you're too tired or you fall asleep, and then you get up and go to bed, start your day over, and you do it again and again and again. You just sort of distract yourself. You let the TV take you away into another world. You can do that. People obviously can do that now with the internet. It can be almost more severe in some ways than because sometimes people will take it to bed, and still sit there, scrolling Facebook or doing whatever they're doing, and so we distract ourselves from letting our mind really process and think. Lust, sometimes you might think, well, you should have started with lust. Isn't that the big bad sin or whatever? Well, the truth of the matter is that most people who are endeavoring to follow God, most people who are endeavoring, that isn't their number one. It may struggle with it, but it's not. Oftentimes it's these other things that come and take away, rob away our ability to think. But lust is certainly in there, greed and various other kinds of things that occupy a person's mind, take up too much of the disk space. And so Philippians Chapter 4 and verse 8, listen to what Paul says, because this is what we need to do. We need, instead of allowing these unhealthy thoughts or just giving up on thinking creatively or positively happen, here's what we need to do. Paul laid it out so clearly. He said, and now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts. To me, when I see that word fix yourself on something. It's like you just clamp down on it. You grab, you embrace it, you hold on to it. I mean, you get connected to it. Fix your thoughts on what is true. You know, we hear a lot today in the news about false news. You know, we act like that's something new. Have you had gotten grocery? I mean, when you were a kid, remember going to the grocery store? The Inquirer's been around a long time. I don't know when it started or anything else, but it's been around a very long time. People have been knowingly buying false news and enjoying false news for a long time. That's not something new. That's been going on a long, long time. I mean, in fact, I'm just thinking it's incredible that those things are right there in those critical spots at the checkout counter, and people stand there, and obviously they buy them. They wouldn't still be in business. They could sell these things. People buy false news. They're seeing it and going, well, I know that's a bunch of baloney. But I'm curious about what they said about it. And so you go ahead and take it and pick it and go home and read the junk. You got to be kidding me. I mean, I guess it's some form of entertainment or something. I don't know. You know, a new way of doing fiction or I don't know what. But it's like what we put in our mind is unbelievable. So think on things that are true. Why are you going to put a bunch of nonsense and falsehood in your brain? Think on things that are true and honorable. That kind of means you can't watch too much television, okay? If you're going to watch things that are honorable, and you have to be really careful about the movies you watch and everything else because there's a lot of junk. There's a lot of junk in our culture, folks. And so, you know, and a lot of times people will go, well, you know, that was a great movie. That one scene and that other thing and the thing they said over there was pretty bad, but that was a great movie. Well, if you think putting junk in your brain is okay in little bits, then I'm going to have a brownie party, and I'm just going to put some dog poop, just a little bit of dog poop in. It'll be okay, okay? Come on over and have brownies with me. So you wouldn't eat a brownie if it had just a little bit of dog poop in it, but you'll watch all kinds of movies and junk on TV that has all kinds of crap on it, you know? So please, you know, be careful what you do with your mind. Honorable. You know, think about things. It's hard to think about honorable things when you watch dishonorable things. Whatever is right, whatever is pure and lovely and admirable. Now, I will have to tell you guys, we have to fight in this culture to put those things into our mind because there's just a lot of negative stuff out there. There's a lot of things that try to invade us. And so we have to really do it. I'm going to tell you, I like to use this term for myself anyway. I don't know that I've ever really shared it publicly or not, but it's like when it comes to the way you're thinking and the things that you think, you know, a lot of thoughts come to your mind that you don't have to accept. You know, a lot of things will come into your mind, and sometimes people think, well, man, I thought of that, and I thought of this, I thought of the other, well, you don't have to take every thought that comes to your mind and embrace it. Here's what I call it the dirty sock test. You know, I don't know, probably in your house, every time your husband takes off his socks, he takes them off and makes sure he goes straight to the hamper and puts them in the hamper. Or your children, when they take their socks off, you know, they make sure they get them right to the clothes hamper, and I'm sure that's exactly how your house works. So you probably never had this happen. But have you ever dumped like a load of laundry, clean laundry, on the sofa or on a bed, and then some life happened or something, and you come back and there's some stuff, a little bit of stuff on the floor, and some fell off, somebody came by and bumped into it or whatever, and then, you know, your kid took off their socks over there, and so you're going, now you hope nobody's looking, you know. It smells clean to me. Oh, that's terrible, you know. Well, you know, the sock, you don't have to do that, and I'm not saying it's a good thing to do, but I'm just saying, you know, whenever it comes to what you let in your mind, do the sock test to it. That stinks. That's bad stuff. I'm not gonna embrace it. I'm not gonna take it. So if it just helps you somehow come up with some kind of visual to where you can go, you know, I wonder why I'm feeling so negative this week. I wonder why I feel like my thoughts, I can't think positively. You may want to ask, you may want to do the dirty sock thing. What have I been letting into my mind? What have I been passing as clean? What have I been passing as true? What have I been passing as honorable and right, pure and lovely and admirable? What am I thinking those kinds of things, or what am I thinking? And so you may need to get rid of some of that stinking thinking in your life. Now, number 2, declutter your emotional system. Now, let me say this. I'm going through these somewhat quickly because they're a setup for where we're going over the next weeks. We're going to be taking one topic from here, this next series, and it's going to be the spiritual topic, the one that's the spiritual life. We're going to be looking at that over the next several weeks. So I'm quickly going through these to help you engage yourself with it so you can prepare yourself where we're going. So this isn't a fix-all. This is a get you in the game kind of process. Declutter your emotional system. Insecurity, feelings of insecurity. I know. Here's what I've also, everyone struggles with this. We all do. And you say, well, that person's so arrogant, there's no way they're insecure. Do you know what arrogance is? It's another way of overcoming insecurity. And so everybody struggles with it in one way or another. The question is, does it own you or does it take over? Don't allow insecurity to rule you. Comparison. We feel like, well, we're always looking at somebody that's 20 miles ahead of us. Or if we want to feel good about ourselves, we're looking at someone 20 miles behind us. The comparison game always makes you a false winner or a sorry loser. You can't do the comparison game and do well in life. You can't let your emotions be based on what other people have, what other people are doing, where they are in life. Anger, the Bible talks about anger. See, the thing is, sometimes we think we have to get rid of all anger. You can't get rid of all anger. Anger is an emotion God has given us. What you do have to do is make sure that anger comes under God's control. Because anger out of control is what gets us trouble. Then we go into things like sadness and those kinds of emotions. And if we're not careful, those emotions can overwhelm us. They can take charge. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we need to do to rid ourselves, to declutter our emotions from some of the negative things that are there that we experience? I want you to look at Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31. It says, get rid of. I don't know what get rid of means to you, but it seems like to me it means get rid of it. Get rid of it. If my wife says, would you get rid of that garbage? The other day she said we had a real Christmas tree. I'm not saying your fake one wasn't real, but I'm saying a real Christmas tree. It was, and so it was starting to like droop and starting to just look gnarly. And she said, "Get rid of that tree." Well, she didn't mean go move it to another room. She didn't mean just change positions. She meant get rid of it. Gone, out of here. And I think Paul is saying, get rid of this stuff. Get rid of it. Get it out of your life. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. You go, well, Rod, that's nice. How do you? So glad you asked. I'm going to give you a way to get started today, and then when we come to this segment in our series, we're going to give you very, very practical ways that I believe God wants to clean up, clear up, make your emotions a healthy place in your life. I believe that emotional intelligence may be one of the most overlooked qualities life can offer. And I believe that whenever we are emotionally unhealthy, or whenever our emotional IQ is very dented, it disables us in our life. Number 3, declutter your spiritual pathway. Declutter your spiritual pathway. I want to read 2 scriptures to you. And the first one is not on your notes. It's in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. It says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge cloud of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily hinders our progress. So whenever you declutter your spiritual pathway, one of the things that has to happen is you have to address sinful habits. I truly believe that one of the best processes that we can offer you as a church for addressing sinful habits is Celebrate Recovery. We often think, well, I'm not a drunk, I'm not a drug addict, I'm not a whatever. But what I do know is all of us have character defects. And one of the most significant things that Celebrate Recovery does is address character defects. And so I would like to encourage you, if you feel like I just have this recurring sin, this besetting sin that is always slowing down my progress, I would like to encourage you, to compel you really, to come to Celebrate Recovery and allow people to come alongside you and help you with that. And even, you don't have to open up initially or anything like that. You just come at your own pace, but address the sinful habits of life. Unforgiveness is another thing that blocks spiritual pathway. And in fact, the scripture says, Jesus himself said that if we don't forgive others, he won't forgive us. I mean, it's a serious, serious deal not to forgive. Discouragement. Has anybody ever felt discouraged in your life? Man, that's good. We only have 2 people who've ever been discouraged. 3 people. That is amazing. Could I ask that question one more time? Because we're talking about sinful practices right here, guys. Lying's a sin. All right? How many of you have ever been discouraged in your life? Okay. Discouragement hurts. Because it makes, if you weigh 150 pounds, it makes every footstep feel like 500 pounds. Everything, the weight of the world, you can't see your way forward. It's tough. Discouragement is tough. It's tough. And so, but when we allow discouragement to win, well, it clouds our spiritual pathway. Disengagement, lack of discipline, busyness. I'm kind of naming out some things that God might want to call into our lives and say, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. And then Ephesians chapter 3, verse 16, this is a part of the prayer that I prayed from Paul's prayer this morning. It says this: I pray that from his glorious, unlimited resources, he will empower you with inner strength through his Spirit. We can never do this without God's Spirit empowering us. And so how do we do this? It's by letting God's Spirit be at home in our lives. And Paul prayed this for the church at Ephesus. What we prayed this morning for us as a church, that God's Spirit would empower us and with the inner strength through his Spirit. Now, let's go on to number 4. Declutter your physical functioning. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 19 and 20. It says, don't you realize that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who lives in you and was given to you by God? I want you to turn to the person next to you and say, God lives in you. God lives in you. Now I want you to say to them, why don't you act like it? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But but that's the deal. We know he lives in us, but we don't always act like it, do we? We act like he's on a long vacation. We do whatever we want to do. I didn't answer to him. You do not belong to yourself, for God bought you with a high price. So you must honor God with your body. Strong language, and it's important. Do you know that your body is where God dwells on this earth? It's where he dwells on this earth. I have a question. How well are you? How well am I taking care of his house? I bumped into at a gas station today. I bumped into a pastor that I knew him. I don't think he knew who I was, but he pastors a church in Hephzibah, Georgia, and it's actually a thriving church. It's an excellent church, and they have a tremendous facility. It's a great facility, and it's so well kept and everything. So I went over and introduced myself to him, and I said, Pastor, I said, listen, I just want to commend you on the facilities that you have. I said there and how it looks. I said, I think it's just a great testimony to God, how you take care of that place, how it looks. I think it's a great testimony. And in an area where not everything always, some things are, but not everything's always well taken care of. And I said, it's a great testimony. I said, I just want to tell you that I appreciate that. I appreciate what you do. And he said, so we talked just a minute, and he asked where I pastored, and we chatted for a few minutes. And I said, I'm just so glad we got to meet. When I reached out my hand to him, he took my hand, and he laid his other hand right on it. And he just began to pray for me right there. And he prayed with fervency. He prayed with a spirit of encouragement. And he prayed over me. He prayed over our church. And he said some amazing things that he didn't even know that I needed to hear. And he prayed. When he was done, he just sort of held on to me for a little bit. He said, God bless you. And I thought, you know what? And he said, I believe that God is a God of excellence, and everything we do for him should be done with excellence. And I thought, I think he means that. I think he means that all the way through his fiber. And I believe we have to remember that about who we are. We are the place he dwells. I could talk to him about his facilities and say, they look really nice. It's really well kept. But what I got a sense was that his physical temple was well kept as well. And that really meant more to me than the plant, the campus. And I just want to tell you, remember, God lives in this world, in you and in me. We're his dwelling place. So how are we doing with that? Number 5, declutter your relational connections. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 and 5. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wronged. I particularly want to focus on keeps no record of being wronged. Because here's the truth. If you keep a record of being wronged, you have just created clutter in your relational life that will be destructive to you. Not to the people that you hold the grudge at, but to you. You got to declutter. Self-management is critical when it comes to relationships. So many times we want to fix the other people. You know who God wants you to help fix? Yourself. You can't really fix anybody else, but you can fix yourself. Give and take is critical. So many times people want to give. They want to do all the giving, or all the taking, all the taking. It doesn't work that way. That will burn relationships out so fast. You've got to give and take. Communication is critical. Tom alluded to that this morning, particularly in the area of finances, and what an amazing truth that is. And we have testimony of people in here who would say, this has helped our marriage significantly, talking about finances. Expectations. Again, we're going to deal with these things in detail upcoming. Number 6, declutter your vocational priorities. There's some verses of scripture that they just grabbed me this week from Proverbs chapter 25, and they're on your sheet, but actually 2 of them are not complete on your sheet, and so and I didn't catch that till too late, and so I'm gonna read them to you from the scripture because I want you to get the whole thing. Okay, verse 13. All these are found in chapter 25 of Proverbs. A great place to spend a little bit of time if you get it. Faithful messengers are as refreshing as snow in the heat of summer. They revive the spirit of their employer. That is an amazing thing. They revive the spirit of their employer. If you are a good employee, you make the life of your boss so much better, so much easier. It's so important to understand and know when we are trustworthy in our job, we not only make our life better, we make other people's lives better. Those of you that are bosses, you go, if I had 10 of this person, man, I'd have it made. If I just had another person like that person, we'd be way up the road. Those of you employee people, you know that. And so to remember and understand being trustworthy in all that we do is critical. And the second one is verse 19. Verse 19 says this: putting confidence in an unreliable person, now listen carefully, is like chewing with a toothache or walking on a broken foot. So the next time you have an employee who's untrustworthy, you can say, you know what you make me feel like? That I'm chewing with a busted tooth or a toothache, and I'm walking around on a broken foot. Don't say that. But anyway, that's what it feels like. The proverb, I love these proverbs. They're so awesome. They just say it like it is. But also remind you of this. When you do things that way, that's how you're causing the people that are supervisors or over you feel. And then, verse 27, just as it is not good to eat too much, honey, it is not good for people to think about all the honors they deserve. Sitting at your desk at work and going, man, if they paid me what I deserve, they'd go bankrupt around here. If, I don't know why they don't see all the good things. We can just envision all the honors that we should receive. In the meantime, while you're envisioning all those things, you're not doing your job. It's like eating too much honey, make you sick, and it'll make other people sick too. I don't know if you noticed or not, but I got that such and such account, and the other one too, and the third, people don't mind celebrating with you, but they don't want rubbed in their face, and they don't want it's just much better to let other people speak of your greatness. So, trustworthiness, balance, workaholism. How about that? Some people have a problem there. Or laziness. You calling me lazy? No, I'm not. But your boss might be if you don't do your job. Anyway, number 7, declutter your financial budget. Do you know your priorities? What are your priorities? Do you know the difference between a want and a need? Do you know how to identify bad spending habits? Do you know how to make a plan? Do you know how to think as a generous person? Those are all things that are a part of what we need to work on. Now, what we started last week is going to continue through June in a different set of series throughout this time period. And so we're going to look at it as 6 months of changing the way we live our lives, changing the way we do lives. I want you to grab a sheet that is right beside you there, or you might already have it. It's called the worksheet, okay? And yes, it is homework, and you can, if you do it, I'll give you an A+. If you don't, I'm going to give you an F, okay? So you say, what difference does it make? Well, that's up to you, whatever you do with it. And you don't have to turn it in. This is between you and God. But I'm not going to go down through this. All the numbers on here correlate to our outline and the topic of that outline. I'm going to ask you during this week, if you look in the back side of it, here are your directions. Take one of the numbers each day this week and have a little one-on-one time with God. Read read the 2 questions that each number represents slowly and thoughtfully. Number 2 is think, reflect, and concentrate in this area of your life. Let's just say that it's, the area of your emotions. Just think, reflect, and concentrate in that area of your life. Number 3, pray a simple prayer for clarity and guidance about what God would like to reveal to you, what he wants you to let go of, what he wants you to get rid of, what he wants you to embrace. 4, briefly write your thoughts in the blanks. And then number 5, commit yourself to a process of change, knowing that change is often a long process based on our commitment to change. And this is very comprehensive. This is a way we can say, well, I'm going to do all that. No, let's do one thing at a time. This week, this is the one thing you can do. Fill this out. And I will go ahead and tell you that next Sunday, we begin a 4-part series called Soul Care. Soul Care. And it's how you take care of your spiritual life, how you God, and what that looks like.